Hello everybody, Andy here, and today I want to talk to you about terrain and how terrain works for you. I'm going to start with a very simple, basic beginner's explanation of terrain, the way it works, what sort of layouts you might want to consider, where you might be able to get your terrain from, and also, just real beginner stuff before I lean into something a little bit more complex, talking about tournaments, talking about how to make it fair for you, etc, etc. So, with that begun, I've got notes, don't worry. So that I don't go too far off course, okay? So how important is terrain in Kill Team? If you've ever played a skirmish game before, there are many different types of skirmish games, and some of them depend very, very heavily on terrain and some don't at all. For example, if you've played ever Age of Sigmar, well actually, you really don't need much terrain there. It's pretty basic. Whereas if you played 40k, as we're learning in the new 10th edition, it's quite important, and the way that different models interact with terrain or don't have to interact with terrain is incredibly important as well. With skirmish games, very often they have slightly more complex rules around the way terrain is used, because odd as it might sound, with a skirmish game being a smaller version, you have to actually add more rules in than a larger game to make it really worth the time. And so terrain is incredibly important in Kill Team. Whether you're having small, light stuff, or having big buildings, or you want to have absolutely massive cathedrals, it all interacts very differently, and some is good and some is bad. So, you do need to use the correct terrain in Kill Team. Let's start with the idea. Let me show you what board we're playing with here, chaps. So this is the overhead board. I don't like that one. Let's go with this. So, this is using the Octarius set of terrain. If you buy the starter set, you'll just get a bunch of these, and these little barricades and scramble pieces. You will no longer be able to get these buildings, but you can buy them separately. So, if you go out and buy all of this, you would then set, this is good terrain, just to be clear, this is a great set to get, or if you can still find it out in the wild, you should get it. And I've set it up very symmetrical. Okay, and I want to just have a quick word about symmetrical terrain versus asymmetrical terrain. Now, it does say in the core rulebook, asymmetrical terrain is the way the game is meant to be played. But we kind of have to figure out, well, how asymmetrical is asymmetrical? Because technically, this is an asymmetrical board. We've got the 4 buildings and one in the middle, yes, but the light terrain, not symmetrical, right? We've got it's much denser here than here. Is this asymmetrical enough? Or do they mean take one out, put that there, take another out, and suddenly, do they mean asymmetrical like this? I don't know. Let's have a little think about that. So, asymmetrical is a great way to play the game, and the reason asymmetrical is important is because the game is not played in real time. Somebody has to go first. Someone has to be an attacker, someone has to be a defender, somebody makes the first move in the game. And if you have an identical board, whoever goes first, or second, whichever one, will have an advantage of some kind. By making something asymmetrical, you are giving the power to negate the first/second activation advantage. So asymmetrical is important, and it allows for another player choice in whether you want to go first or second, as that will allow you to deploy first or pick which side of the board you're on. So it is very important purely because we are not playing a game that is played out in real time. There you go. So asymmetrical is important. However, I do want to stress, if you're playing on a symmetrical board, it's really not the end of the world. It's fine. This is a fine board. You could play on this board. Nobody's really going to say, oh, that's an unfair board. Well, okay, some people might, but they're losers, forget them. Harsh takes, so I do apologise to everybody, my bad. However, I think this is a very acceptable board. The Octarius terrain is good. However, this could be made to be a better board with a simple change, which is removing this centre line of sight blocker, replacing it in the corner, putting that there, and then putting it to the side. There you go. This is now a better board than what we had before, using exactly the same pieces, but because this and this are very different pieces of terrain in the way that they work, and then we've deliberately changed this so that it's not just directly in the center, this is now a better board. There you go. However, that's not what I want for my first example, so I will quickly put those back. Tournament-wise, so this is a quick note on tournaments. If you ever go, oh, hold on. If you ever go to a tournament, you might go to a tournament, certainly in London they do this a lot, where every board will be the same. Every board, everybody brings their own set of whatever they're playing, Octarius, Into the Dark, whatever, and that's the board they will play, and all 20 tables or whatever will play an identical board. And that's really cool if you are able to do that. However, a lot of the places, for example Spain and Poland, tend to not do that. They will have a general concept of guidelines, but the boards won't be the same. So maybe one board is Octarius, but the other will be a Chalnath, or it will be just a random collection of boxes, and they will play on that. But it will be, for example, this here is still roughly this here, but with a different piece of terrain, and it might play differently, but that's okay. It's fine. If you're looking to tournament play, both are valid. Don't worry about it. Personally, I've actually taken a real liking. I hope I didn't just knock the microphone too hard there. Personally, I have taken a real liking to every board being different. Don't get me wrong, every board being identical, being Octarius, whatever, is really cool. But I think if you're playing, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe even 8 games over the course of, 1 or 2 days, the point of a tournament is to flex your mental muscles a bit. If every single game is the same, but you're just changing the position of the objectives, it's not really doing the same thing, in my opinion. And I think that forcing your players to play on similar but different boards is actually a very good thing to test their skill. There you go. Right. Into the Dark versus Open. This is obviously only going to be a very small note because I don't have my Into the Dark set out. Into the Dark's great. I think it's a really great format, really cool terrain, but all of the missions and deployment layouts, you just follow them from the book, which is amazing. I just want to say how good that is, just to be clear. So you just follow that from the book, no need to think about it. Book tells you exactly what to do. Unfortunately, we don't have that in Open. In Open, we have to figure things out for ourselves, which is why there's so much discussion about it, because Into the Dark, you can't go wrong. It tells you exactly what to do. Open, you can go very, very wrong. So, there you go. Right. A quick note on verticality. So, verticality, as we can see here, let's go back to the stream all. This set, and pretty much every set you are going to buy from GW as a single set, is one floor, which in this instance is 3 inches. Yep, 3 inches. But if you were to buy Chalnath, which I have over there, it's actually 5 inches. Doesn't really make a difference, it's fine. What matters is the number of levels you are playing on. I would say, and this is generally the way it's played because it's easiest for everybody, but Kill Team should be played on 1 level. Now the reason for this, so Into the Dark obviously doesn't have levels. It has one floor, 1 level, that's fine. You don't have to worry yourselves about climbing, dropping, vantage points, etc. 1 level, like this, like Octarius, does give you the ability to use something called vantage points, which is where you are able to shoot models easier. Cool? Fine. Everyone's pretty happy with this. It's a thing that you have to play around often, as it can cause feel bads with sniper nests. For example, if we see this, we have our little barricade here on this terrain. This actually is a really good way for you to not be able to get shot if you have the correct models, because you can shoot from conceal if you have a silenced weapon. To fix that, that can sometimes be a feels bad, you just turn this around. There you go. Now you would not be able to hide despite having a silenced weapon. If that's something you want to do, that's something you can do. Cool. However, why not play with 2 or 3 levels of verticality? Great question. That's because of the way movement interacts with climbing. Climbing is very, very restrictive unless you have the fly keyword or special equipment. So with a single floor, that's fine, but there are some factions that basically just can't climb. Like, the slower factions, we're talking Necrons, Death Guard, their compendium, but whatever, and Hearthkin Salvagers. You can give them equipment to climb, but they're not really built around that. Like, they're not balanced around, oh, these guys have to climb 3 levels to get to an objective or to get a good firing point, right? Like, it's a lovely idea to think that the devs thought, oh, all of our teams are going to be playing on four different levels on a board. No, devs have not considered you doing that. If that were to happen, everything with Fly would just become infinitely better, and Void Dancers are strong enough, we don't need to give them a second floor to play around with, okay? Verticality is cool, but, and I'm gonna give you the hot take of the video maybe, it's not needed. You don't need to have a second floor, even on open, okay? Even on an open board, you don't need to have any vantage points. You could play this and just say, you know, oh no, you can't go on any of these vantages, right? Just pretend they're not there, and this board would be just fine. As fine as it is already. Obviously, we've talked about the asymmetrical thing. Cool. So, we've done that. Now let's talk quickly about the best terrain. But before we talk about the best terrain, I would like to quickly say that this next bit is a subscriber-only benefit, and that is, if you're a subscriber to my channel, I'd like to give you a big double hello. Wow, yes, a big double hello. Isn't that super awesome and wholesome? Hey, if you'd like to get yourself a double hello in the next video because you're not a subscriber right now, then consider subscribing, liking, leaving a comment. Also, a shout out to everybody that is currently watching me live, because yes, weirdly, I'm recording this live. Don't ask why. I don't have any answers for you. Anyway, let's talk about the best terrain out there. So I'm not going to say exactly the best terrain, because it's whatever. And I don't really want to push you towards one piece of terrain or manufacturer over another. There's some great stuff out there. You know what? Mantic Games do all of their Sci-Fi Dead Zone stuff in cubes. Really great. This Octaria set is generally considered to be like the best, I guess. Like from everything Kill Team's released that is open, not into the dark, everybody agrees Octarius is the best set yet. We also have a bunch of old stuff from GW that you can buy. We've also got things from the MDF supplier range. There's a lot out there, and so I want to tell you what you should look for when you're looking to make your own board. Okay, so let's say you don't have access to Octarius. I've got Octarius. You can't really buy Octarius anymore. So this is cringe. This is gatekeeping. This is bad, okay? I would like to point you towards 2 sets that GW does do, which is, let me reach over and grab them, this here and this here. So, these here, these Munitorum crates, which I have not painted well, let's be clear, are just, which are just pretty standard thing, pretty standard block. You can put these down. If you drop them in like this, they act in a certain specific way. This is a nice little piece of terrain. It will cost you the same as this to get up due to the way the climbing mechanics work. And if you don't like what it's doing, just put like that. You can make it smaller by putting it up like that, and there you go. Because footprint is a very important thing, which is why I'm going to then point you in the direction of these right here. So what these are the ruins, the ruined walls, which you can still buy, to be clear. The ruined walls from just GW, they're the ones that go with the Basilicanum and stuff, the Sector Imperialis rules, I think. Now, the reason these are the best walls out there is because when it comes to Kill Team, we all know Kill Team isn't really Kill Team, it's Movement Team, right? And so the more space that you have to move on the board, the more you are able to express your skill in the game, or your lack of skill in the game, and that's really what we're trying to do here. So with these being such thin walls, but still being heavy, you can place it here, and it's having a huge effect on the board. It's creating lots of blocks of line of sight, but it's not stopping your movement. It is stopping your movement there and there, but it's not a huge brick, right? Like, if we do the same thing here, right? We put that there, and we put that there. This is roughly the same little square profile of heavy. This stops you from moving anywhere here. This allows you full movement within that same footprint, right? There you go. There you go. So any sort of like thin walls you can get are really good, I would say. Cool. Right. Thin heavy doesn't restrict movement. Everybody's fine. Cool. Also, just to clarify, you can do this. This is totally fine, and this will just give you a vantage point in the center. That's okay. The reason this is actually a good vantage point is potentially, if you want it that way, is because it doesn't have any of these barricades on the side. So you could stand up here, you could be shot. It's not considered an overpower barricade, whereas sometimes this piece of terrain really can. There you go. Cool. So if you're looking for terrain out there, you do want, I genuinely think that thin, heavy is the way to go. Nice. Okay. The starter set. I want to quickly talk about the starter set, which is this. If you remove these 5 buildings, you have the starter set terrain. Now, I think that the starter set terrain is really good to start the game with, obviously. And I would say that if you're still undecided about the starter set terrain, before you go out and try to track down the rest of Octarius or try to track some other buildings down, I would recommend continue playing with just the starter set and just find anything that can give you 2 levels. You know, like these really useful boxes here. There you go. That can be, just put that there. Suddenly, you will have a level, okay? A level that you can jump up on, all right? And that is going to then demonstrate to you how light terrain interacts with vantage points. And that's something really important for you to know before you get into the rest of Kill Team, if I'm honest. It's going to completely change the way everything works for you. And then, again, with this here, with your really useful box, your 1 vantage point or whatever, and then only the starter set boxes, I would say, then, after you played a few games with all of this light and a few vantage points, then I want you to play the same again, but make all of the light heavy. And once you understand how that game plays, maybe you'll understand just how powerful the keywords you can apply to different bits of terrain can make everything. Okay, cool. And then I want to do very quickly, because this, as always, is taking much longer than I thought. General rules and things to keep in mind. Right, so on this board, typically, you're going to be having a deployment strip at the back of 3 inches. Okay, sorry, square. Then, so you want to kind of, here, let me move this stuff off, right? So you have a deployment zone 3 inches. Placing a barricade there is probably a good idea, right? Nice. Is that kind of it? What else do you need to think about when you're placing terrain? What comes next? What do we think comes next in this? So we've got our 3 inches. People need somewhere to hide. So you put a barricade there. Great. What comes next? A movement. Okay, that's how far they can move. Suddenly, whoever has deployed at the front of this 3 inches and then just made a normal move forwards ends within cover in the center of the board. Okay, great. Nice. However, a lot of teams also have a dash. Everybody has access to a pre-game dash, but a lot of teams also have like Into the Breach or so they can do essentially a full team pre-game dash. So you might want to consider having something at the 3-inch mark. Let me put this terrain back because I don't know what I'm doing. So you want to make sure that both, or wherever your deployments are, you want both sides, both deployment zones to have adequate cover, which could just be one big building. Like, you know, you generally also just, do you want lots of cover or not much cover? I'm gonna give it a hot one and say that with everything I've said so far, you'd be better off with not enough cover rather than too much cover. Obviously that really does depend hugely on who's playing, and probably if you're setting terrain up in this way that I'm stating, you know who you're facing off against, and you can just kind of move stuff around and play how you want. If one of you is Pathfinders, put more terrain on the board, all right? It's okay. But if, let's say one of you is Felgor, it's like, okay, well, let's play with a little bit of a lighter board today and see how that plays, right? So anyway, you kind of want to have stuff at your 3-inch mark because people need to hide when they deploy. And if you don't give enough deployment cover, if you don't give enough cover within the deployment zone for people to hide behind, that's not good. You generally want enough cover to hide behind. Nice. You then want to make sure that there is somewhere for them to run to within 6 inches. So this here is perfectly placed right there to be something that they move and then after 6 inches still have cover off, right? Nice. Then you want to be thinking about your vantage points in the center. This wouldn't have to be a vantage point. That cover, that could be a vantage point, right? And what you want to do is get down low and check your line of sight. Which objectives can this see? So we've got 1, 2, 3. Cool. Those are in our size, that's kind of fine. And actually, that's all it can see. So this would be, I think, a good vantage point. Because it can't see anything, to be clear. Okay, it has quite a demanding presence, a commanding presence, but it can't actually see any other objectives. To be clear, I set these objectives up not looking at the terrain. It was for something else. But you get down to eye level, you know, get your little army painter toy, right? And you say, okay, well, where can I see from up here? Where am I not crossing the lines? I can't see anything. These 3 objectives are like totally safe from this. Not the whole of this objective, but if you're just on this side, you won't be able to be shot. So that's a great vantage point. It's tempting, it can do something, but it's not mandatory for you to get up there, right? Well, that's kind of it. There you go. There's so much more you can think about, and certainly, really, those are your 2 keys. Set up a 3-inch mark, a 6-inch mark, and make sure there's stuff for them to get to, okay? And then when you set up your vantage points, make sure that they don't have scope of more than, I would say, 1.5 objectives. That's a weird number, I understand. But on this here, this was actually a perfect position because if the enemy placed poorly here, then you would be able to shoot them. But if they move forwards a bit, you wouldn't be able to shoot them. That's a half objective you can see. So 1.5 objectives per vantage point is, in my opinion, a good number. And that kind of dictates everything, really. So if each vantage point, and you've got 4, can only see 1.5 objectives, that is easily your entire board filled. Cool. Final note about density. I touched on it very briefly there. Oh, we have to talk about doors as well. Density first. I think it's okay to go with not as dense a board as people often play with, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that when you place your board, understand that if you go with a sparse board, you are going to be buffing shooting teams. And if you go with a dense board, you are going to be buffing melee teams. If you're not playing in a tournament, if you're not building this for a tournament pack, just figure it out with your opponent. Yeah, if you're both playing shooting teams, have some fun and go with a relatively sparse board. If one of you always crushes the other and they're playing Chaos Cults, just go with a sparse board, right? You know, like, play the game that works for you. Finally, we'll talk about doors. So this is, here we go. If we look up here, all of this Octaris terrain has doors on. I will let you know now. All of the competitive tournaments play with these doors as being something that can open and close. Okay? Sorry, they don't really open and close. It's not the same as Into the Dark. You could just move through them with no penalty. And if something's on the other side blocking you, you can't move through them because they're blocking you, right? So there you go. My personal preference on them doesn't matter because all the competitive tournaments have decided that doors are mandatory. For me personally, I don't think doors are mandatory. I think that doors are something that were needed to shut down some of the early teams that were very shooting heavy. But now that we are in a melee heavy meta, having doors just buffs those melee teams. But it's whatever. It's whatever, who cares? doesn't matter. I would say don't be afraid to try with and without doors and see how that feels to play. Both are good, and it's only an issue particularly with Octarius because it has modelled doors, but the kill zone itself didn't have any door rules. Cool. Whew. Okay, and hey, if you've made it to the end of the video, I'd like to give you a big triple hello. Wow, wasn't that so wholesome? Guys, honestly, genuinely, legit, no word of a lie, no cap. Thanks for watching to the end of the video. Quite seriously, nothing helps a small channel like mine more than just watching the damn thing, like quite genuinely. But if you really like what I've done here, do consider leaving a like, a subscribe, a comment, all that great stuff. And if you really, really like what I'm doing here, consider supporting me on Patreon, because you know what? Without Patreon, without my supporters over there, I would no longer be doing this channel. So much love to them, much love to you, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.